Memory Transcription Subject, Slanik, Venlol Space Corps. Date, Standardized Human Time, November 29, 2136. The extermination office featured a modest array of cubicles, past the lobby. There were more employment opportunities than hunting predators. Call centers had to be operational around the clock, and another set of pencil pushers checked web reports. Other workers researched infestations, identifying potential culprits and their method of survival. These briefings prepared the officers for a job's challenges. The humans peered around the entrance, before a brave few slid into a cubicle. No gunfire was unleashed at our appearance, so the rest of us took positions. Marcel produced a pocket-sized drone, and the device silently soared into the air. It glided over rows of cubicles, searching for any heat signatures. The miniature robot stopped near a window and zoomed in on two tillfish. The predators crept forward, with the same silence their ancestors used to hunt creatures twice their size. Dino mimicked their focus, as its handler whispered something to it. The dog seated itself, and I took my opportunity to distance myself. The gun felt light as a feather in my grip. It stayed pointed right at the hiding spot. Marcel poked his gun over the cubicle wall, and his comrades also shoved scopes at the tillfish. Their mandibles clicked with terror, surprised by the primate's stealth. They bent their heads in a gesture of submission. Large predators shouldn't be able to approach without audible cues, yet humans could suppress their footsteps so well. "Please don't shoot us," an insectoid clicked. "We're just IT workers, we surrender." Marcel jerked his gun skyward. "Stand up. Walk toward the window." The tillfish scuttled back, though their compound eyes lingered on the predators. My human shouted demands to turn around, but the enemy hesitated to comply. Something was odd about their posture, and I couldn't chalk it up to fear. Their appendages seemed folded to conceal an object. Marcel approached to search the workers. His hazel eyes were narrowed to slits. The tillfish's thoraxes twitched, poised to strike out. Without any consideration, I lunged at one of them. The insect I tackled bucked under my grip, and kicked its cohort in the process. I clung on for dear life, reaching for whatever was in its clutches. The humans noticed the downed one was wielding a gun. That IT worker was scrambling to right himself. Multiple bullets incised the hostile's exoskeleton before he could enact his plans. Marcel pointed his firearm at the one I was riding, but he couldn't get a clean shot. The tillfish had latched onto my forepaw, which prevented me from dismounting. I screeched as the tillfish slammed me against the wall. Adrenaline surged through my veins like a drug. My free arm shot toward his lens-like eyes, and I sank tiny claws into the smooth flesh. He howled in pain, loosening his grip on my other paw. My body crashed to the floor with a thud, knocking the wind from my lungs. The predators pumped the tillfish full of lead before he could try anything else. Some blood splattered onto my fur, painting yellow splotches across my chest. Every muscle in my body quivered as horror washed over me. I crawled back toward the humans and struggled to my feet. Several primates helped wipe the blood off, checking me for injuries. "Slanik, for the love of God, why did you not shoot those tillfish?" Marcel grunted. I straightened my head for "WL. I saw them reaching for a weapon." "I understand that. My question stands. I don't know. Let's get moving." Terran soldiers swept the room, verifying that other tillfish hadn't stowed away. We progressed to an interior stairwell, which led to the upper floor. The armory was tucked by the landing, but it had been emptied of guns and flamethrowers. The exterminators found a use for every weapon in their possession. I hugged the wall alongside Marcel, using his presence to ground me. Every instinct suggested to hyperventilate and dwell on the bloodshed I'd kick-started. But giving into those thoughts wouldn't facilitate my survival, it would hinder the UN's mission too. These tillfish needed to die, because they were a threat to Earth. There was nothing else to consider. These rebels were the strongest advocates for joining that genocidal raid, I imagine. They're responsible for billions dead. The predators were hesitant to climb the stairwell. There had been dozens of life signatures in this building, so the bulk were waiting on the top floor. Per the tactics UN training drilled into me, this was a choke point. It was advantageous to defenders and forced assailants to cover multiple angles. Grenades weren't a viable option, with their tendency to roll back on us. Is there another way up? I whispered. Marcel shrugged. We could just blow this place to kingdom come, but the brass doesn't want collateral. There's no telling if there's hostages till we sweep the premises. I'm surprised you didn't suggest dropping out of the sky. That is the human way, as I recall. Intel suggests this faction has surface-to-air capabilities. Attaining a ladder is possible, but the roof is likely booby-trapped anyways. These fellas seem to want us to come to them. Why? I don't know. They're basically a cult, and they're cornered. They could be planning to take us down with them. My human turned his gun skyward, and inched back first toward the stairs. He popped off several shots from a sharp angle, which connected with one tillfish. Judging by the alarm chatter, there were 6 or 7 defenders perched above us. The insects leaned over the railing, and rained fire on the redhead. Tension crossed Marcel's scarred face, as he ducked back under the alcove. The humans waited for the enemy to deplete ammunition, knowing they weren't conservative in its usage. My friend peeked back out, and was joined by a pair of comrades. The trio offered suppressive fire, as the Terran troops hustled up the stairs. I swallowed my nerves, which reminded me what an easy target I was. If these humans could bear the risk, so could I. This was about trusting their plan. My feet sprinted up 2 stairs at a time, and I joined our squad midway up. We had a better line of sight from this angle, which allowed us to bombard the tillfish. One human dropped beside me, and another released a strained yelp. This charge was a strategical blunder, but it was the lesser evil of our options. We were hoping to scale the incline as quickly as possible. Though I was too frazzled to aim, I got off several blind shots. Whether or not my bullets contributed, the exterminators were gunned down in seconds. Panting heavily, I labored up the rest of the stairs. The predators tended to our wounded, lugging both to the top. One's binocular eyes were glassy, suggesting they were already gone. My eyes shot back to Marcel, who was the first to engage the tillfish. Relief clamped at my heart when I saw him hobbling up behind me. His brazenness could have gotten him killed. Marcel tested the door. Easy now. We're going to sustain losses, Slanik. We can't let that distract us, we all know the risks. I didn't say anything. I squeaked. You didn't have to. You were your emotions all over your face. I rubbed my temples, trying to fight off a nagging headache. Dino bounded up the stairs, and began sniffing at my legs. The dog's presence was the last straw, in a situation that was stressful already. Why couldn't the damn beast leave me alone? Wasn't it enough that I was in imminent danger from bullets? The humans departed the stairwell onto the second floor, and a slew of gunfire welcomed them. I bolted away from Dino. Getting shot was preferable to his creepy drooling. This appeared to be some sort of break room, with lounge stools, tables, and a mini kitchen in the area. The tillfish had condensed the lounge chairs into fortifications, and upturned tables for cover too. Our position was a barren bottleneck, which was by design. Glass shattered to my left, as the window was nailed by errant bullets. Shards glinted on the floor, and reflected the sunlight pouring in. I suddenly wished I had goofy paw coverings, like the humans. My feet weren't fleshy like theirs, but pads wouldn't stop me from impaling myself. Guess the only place to hide is by the cabinets to my right. Already lots of humans cramming in there though, need somewhere less crowded. Keeping as far away from the broken window as possible, I scampered across to the opposite end of the room. Bullets whizzed past my head and took out several humans who tailed me. A handful of us reached the other side, where an arch opened up into a parallel corridor. Further down, there were a set of doors marked with a biohazard symbol. I assumed that was where prey remains and predator experimentation were housed. Bootsteps closed in on my position, rough and unsteady. Marcel dived through the archway, flashing his teeth at me. He huddled against the wall, and predator chemicals caused his eyes to dilate. The vegetarian sucked in several breaths, while tillfish gunfire peppered the plaster around us. I risked a brief glance at my paw pads, which seemed clear of glass. UN soldiers retreated to the stairwell as bullets decimated their position. My side advance was secure against a support wall, for now, but the firefight had ground to an impasse. The tillfish exterminators needed to be flushed from their shelter before we incurred more losses. I propped my gun up against my chest. Those bastards think they can hunker down. What about grenades now? I thought you'd never ask, the Terran chuckled. Several soldiers readied grenades, calculating the perfect moment to strike. Human predation was methodical, a far cry from mindless chasing. Their discipline kept their units functioning as well-oiled machines. If I was opposing them, efficiency would be more frightening than an animalistic frenzy. Terrans were much less likely to make mistakes than the Arxer. I was grateful to be on their team. If first contact had gone differently, the Venwell would have been the first ones fighting them. We would have never had the exchange program, which meant I'd still see humans as monsters. What fate would befall Earth had Sovlin gotten his mitts on the Odyssey astronauts? My friend would be dead too, and I might have helped kill him. I shook my head, not wanting to think about dreadful causalities. The predators clattered explosives across the floor, which arrived at the tillfish fortifications. Marcel wouldn't let me carry grenades since my throwing ability was negligible. Human arm torsion was effortless. In contrast, hunting with spears forced their ancestors to evolve precision. Enemy screams followed the grenades as the detonations tore any shelter apart. This time, I understood that humans would capitalize on the chaos. My legs propelled me back into the room, forsaking the corridor's refuge. A few tillfish retained their guns, but most hostiles languished on the floor. Buttery blood washed across the tile, with spatter reaching up onto the walls. The Terrans strode up to the barricades. Dino darted into the heart of the action as well. The dogs subdued any tillfish who were rising, while the humans picked off writhing targets. UN soldiers admired the heap of bug corpses, poking a few to ensure they were dead. Our ranks sustained some damage in the fray, but we got the better end of the bargain. Marcel shuffled into the corridor. So, that door we saw. I've learned the Federation warning symbols, and the last thing we need is them springing some cure on us. Are they testing bioweapons here? Highly unlikely. Consider where we are. It's marked biohazard because of predator contamination. You are predator contamination, lots of it, so I doubt you care. You never know, Slanek. Contact with some animal's saliva might turn me into a super predator with claws and horns. I'd be more worried about that with Dino than you. You ready to end this? The redhead nodded. I mulled over how their teasing behavior had rubbed off on me. Sarcasm had never featured in my lexicon so regularly. It did seem like a healthy way of expressing stress, especially in extreme situations. Bantering with my predator distracted me from the nauseating fear. Upon closer inspection, the biohazard door was left ajar. Marcel nudged it with his foot, eliciting a mournful creak. The human made gagging noises and tugged his shirt over his nose. I wasn't sure what his reaction pertained to, given my lack of smell. Was the air laced with some poison? Bleh. That acrid smell, Marcel coughed. My gaze darted to the floor. and the source of his discomfort revealed itself. A thin coating of brownish liquid amassed, like a wading pool. The gasoline was discernible upon entry, even with blinders on. Did the exterminators think humans would trample through a blaze zone? Most sapiens avoided burning alive where possible. I swished my tail with disgust. Petrol. There must be a few tillfish camped inside, waiting to set it off. I don't have time for this. Playing Timberwood's not on my agenda. The human's teeth protruded with malevolence as he acquired a match. How about a little role reversal? Surprise, fuckers. After lighting the object in his hand, Marcel dropped the spark into the gasoline rim. Orange fire snaked across the liquid and leapt onto any secondary fuel, walls, furniture, and tillfish alike. My human turned his back on the inferno and strolled back to the stairwell. While the exterminators achieved their self-immolation plan, we needed to double-time it out of here. The UN troops jogged past the break room's body trail and skipped down the stairwell. Their longer legs allowed them to retrace their steps quickly. I lagged behind them a bit, but my friend circled back for me. Marcel scooped me up in strong arms, ignoring his own exhaustion. The human was a good herdmate, he always looked out for my welfare. I know he'd never leave me behind, come stampede or high water. It was a quick journey, cuddling against his muscular form. We hustled past the cubicles in the lobby, before bursting into fresh air. The blaze had gained intensity as it battered the upper windows. I spotted tillfish silhouettes thrashing about, enveloped by smoke and debris. Perhaps it was unwise that the professionals made their workshop flammable by design. Guard each exit, Marcel barked. Those exterminators will either burn alive, or they'll try to evacuate. Unless they come out surrendering, shoot any you see. Dino's quadrupedal form was visible among our ranks. The dog strayed from its handler and opted to harass me again. In a rare moment of bravery, I shoved its snout away. It offered a pitiful whine, before curling up at my feet nonetheless. Its brown eyes never left me, as it thumped its tail a single time. Why wouldn't it leave me alone? It was for Marcel's sake that I didn't chase it off with my gun. I hated that mutt just as much as the humans adored it. Once we cleared the neighborhoods of rogue patrols, this mission would be complete. I couldn't wait to achieve victory, so I could get myself far away from the feral predator. Memory transcription subject, Governor Tarva of the Venlo Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, November 29, 2136. Venlo resources were spread thin, with millions of rescues taxing our resources. Volunteers worked to exhaustion, and human refugees chipped in as much as anyone. The predators' assistance was appreciated, but we had to monitor their interactions with the former cattle. I was certain they didn't mean any harm. However, the primates often didn't realize how terrifying their basic mannerisms could be. All it took was one Terran reacting with aggression, or lifting their mask at the wrong time. If their secret got out within this facility, I could imagine how the rescues would take the news. Would a former exterminator like Glim accept that our closest ally was a predator race? Could HFY grasp the Federation's misdeeds after studying our idyllic relations in history? Hey, just so you know, 1 of every 10 races are flesh-eaters, I imagined myself saying. Oh, and our neighbors are predators, we're allied in their war against the Federation. With the Arxer too. This was a delicate situation, regardless of outside intervention. A large chunk of these Venlo were raised in captivity and lacked any understanding of our modern society. Their language and higher thinking functions were rudimentary at best. The Arxer hadn't exposed them to other aliens or offered any welfare services. Governor? It's your move, Sarah said. HFY was laying on her stomach, inspecting the Jenga tower. The former historian had come out of her shell. It was good to see her taking an interest in the Terran's culture. Noah and Sarah kept their answers vague, which failed to sate her curiosity. The humans brought this block game with them today, and used it as an introduction to their recreation. My claw tapped a loose piece near the center, and I coaxed it out of its spot. The tower quivered a bit, which sparked my nerves. The Venlo rescues leaned in with interest, alertness in their eyes. Satisfied that the structure would hold, I set the plank atop it. Noah rubbed his hands together. Wonderfully done. My turn. Dear stars. Glim flinched back, and shot the human a wary glance. How did your voice go that deep, Noah? I have a bit of a cough, the ambassador muttered, clearing his throat. Making it very throaty, I apologize. Noah avoided turning toward Glim, which would indicate binocular vision. The predator's emotions were invisible under his mask, but the Venlo exterminator's confusion was apparent. Male human speech had a growling texture, which added weight to their voices. This was in stark contrast to our squeaky pitch. The UN ambassador jabbed his hand forward with no tact, and yanked a piece from the bottom. The Jenga tower toppled over, crashing to the floor. I suspected Noah had lost the game on purpose, to distract Glim. The astronaut excused himself, and sped out of the room. He realized how close he was to blowing his cover. Glim tilted his head. You Gaians are a strange species, Sarah. Noah did not seem sick to me, this entire time. Noah tries to play tough. I bet he's doctored himself up on cough syrup, the Terran scientist responded. Something about you bothers me. It might just be that I can't read you. If you aren't comfortable taking your masks off, I'd like to at least see an anatomical diagram of your species. I'll look into acquiring that for you. Will you? That tone. What are you implying, Glim? The male Venlo pinned his ears back, and swished his tail with irritation. I feared that he'd already guessed the Gaians were predators. However, the fact that he was irked, rather than afraid, suggested he might not have the answers yet. The former exterminator's attitude was worsening by the day though. It's positive that his spirit hasn't been crushed, but he's becoming a problem. Maybe he needs to be isolated from humans. I heard from my family for the first time in years, yet you're limiting contact to pre-recorded messages. You won't let us watch TV for entertainment, or have access to the internet, Glim growled. You avoid every question we ask you. There's something you don't want us to know. Sarah raised her hands. That's not fair. This isn't fair. I'm still in captivity in my home, here with my own people. Dodgy aliens seem to be running the show. You won't even let us go outside to get a breath of fresh air. HFY was listening in silence. Sarah. To the museum. IW want to visit. Alarm coursed through my veins, as I knew we couldn't honor their requests. Humans appeared in every form of media, including fiction, and were a popular subject on our internet. Outside of these walls, Glim and HFY would encounter Terran refugees. Millions of them remained on Venlo Prime, so they could be walking around unmasked anywhere. Sarah adjusted her facial garb. I'm sorry if you feel that our restrictions are unfair. We have no idea what your timetable is to readjust, and we'd like to take things slowly. Better safe than sorry. Sensory overload might awaken negative emotions, and slow down your recovery. Discussion of the war is everywhere too, I chimed in. Maybe you two recover faster than others, but several of your counterparts are shattered. Our goals are set with the average Venlo in mind. HFY narrowed her eyes. How did you even free us anyways, Tarva? Why would the Greys let us go? The Gaians negotiated your release. What could the Gaians have that the Arxer would want? Strength, Noah's voice rumbled behind me. Resources. Glim's pupils snapped back to the doorway. Noah returned with a bowl of fruit, and made a point of grabbing a piece. He raised his full-face mask just enough to eat the food, though his canines were still obscured. The two Venlil studied his furless chin and his snack choice. The exterminator seemed to relax a little. Consuming plants should halt predator suspicions, for now. The Terran ambassador offered the fruit to the Venlil, who snagged a few pieces for themselves. He waved a berry-picking hand and ushered the rescues back to their room. It was a clear attempt to avoid further questions. We had to find a way to give them some of what they wanted. HFY hugged Sarah as the scientist tucked her into bed. The female predator patted the Venlil gently, returning the affectionate gesture. The historian had no clue who her caretaker was. Compassion was a trait we once reserved for prey. Until we met humans, we assumed predators were incapable of empathy. Glim shied away when Noah tried to adjust his blanket. The exterminator's skeptical look had intensified, following the ambassador's answer about the Arxer. Strength the Greys would respect was something to be feared, and not a quality prey should possess. Likewise, the only resources that interested the Dominion was food. "What did you mean by strength and resources?" the male rescue stuttered. Noah withdrew to the doorway. "We defend ourselves, and we're proactive about it. We can find a scientific solution to anything, manufacture anything, even the unsavory stuff the Arxer want. The Arxer want cattle, to eat, and killing tools. We did what was needed to get you back. We're going to protect the Venlil from now on." HFY whined. "You see, can't protect us from them. Nobody can. Why, you're naive." Noah shoved his hands into his pockets, but pride exuded from his posture. There was a hunter's grace in his stride. The way he strutted, arching his spine, asserted dominance. Even with the mask on, I could sense his vicious snarl. The human wouldn't stand for Earth's prowess being called into question. "Oh HFY, we already beat the Arxer once. The Federation's only victory, in hundreds of years, was because of us," Noah stated. "Have some faith." Sarah shook her head, slashing her hand in front of her throat. I scurried up to him and tugged at his wrist. My beloved needed to adjust his behavior because that speech wasn't prey-like at all. Usually, Noah was more sensitive to our sensibilities. Perhaps it was Glim's profession, goading him into boastfulness. I dragged the human down the hallway, out of earshot of the rescues. Noah allowed himself to be maneuvered. There was no way I could move him without his cooperation. After checking my periphery to see if either Venlil followed us, I took a deep breath. It was important that I used a hushed voice to avoid prying ears. "Why would you tell them that?" I hissed. "Your species found FTL months ago, and now you're telling them you single-handedly defeated the Arxer. How will they conclude that primitives did that?" Sarah crossed her arms. "Tarva is right. These Venlil aren't ready for the facts. Remember what sort of reactions we get from normal people. The exchange programs? Alpha?" Noah sighed, throwing his hands in the air. "Maybe we should get the truth over with, instead of dodging their questions and locking them up. Glim was an exterminator. Any deceit will make him double down on his pre-existing beliefs. Hold your horses. I know they're going to find out eventually, but they've been here 2 days. You'd be compromising the identity of all of our people. Glim and HFY are strong-willed. We could break it to them, in pieces. They deserve to know who Venlil Prime's closest ally really is." "And who is that?" a voice squeaked behind us. "Who are you really?" The Terran swiveled around to face HFY, an instinctive reaction. Their uncanny tendency to look right at a target tipped off the historian. It was the sign of narrow vision to snap around a full 90 degrees. I could see fear flash in her eyes. She had realized the truth, or at least part of it. HFY backed away, tail drooping between her legs. Sarah raised her hands and took a careful step forward. The female Venel shrieked before bolting down the hallway. I could hear her nails scrabbling on the tile as she slipped in haste to get away. The sounds of crying were audible too, amidst the screams. The poor thing just realized she hugged a predator. Oh dear. I positioned myself in Noah's path, stopping him from following. Don't chase her. You're just going to make it worse. The ambassador cursed. What do we do? We can't just sit around. She's going to start a panic. I'll notify the Venel doctors and get someone to calm her down. We should check on Glim now. He must have heard the commotion. Yeah, HFY wasn't exactly subtle, Sarah said. Come on, Noah. We don't need both our patients freaking out. The humans raced back into the hospital room. Sarah gasped with horror, and Noah's breathing accelerated to a panicked pace. Catching up to the primates, I saw that both beds were empty. HFY was obviously long gone, so our goal was to minimize the damage. Glim was nowhere to be found either, though. The Terran astronauts started scouring the room, since we hadn't seen the exterminator exit. They crawled on the floor, searching under the beds first. Under different circumstances, it would have been amusing to see a human wriggle under tight spaces. But at the moment, my sole thought was locating our Venel charges. My gaze landed on the walls and the ceiling, browsing for any clues. A food cart had been moved right under an air duct. The grate was pried open too. A clump of gray hair floated down onto my face, and I shouted for the human's attention. Glim must have used this passage to mount an escape. Sarah whistled. Dang, we got a little Houdini here. If he wasn't an exterminator, I'd be impressed. The predators couldn't fit into the crawl space, and I wasn't planning to go in there myself. We must operate under the assumption that Glim fled the premises. There was no telling where he would go, and family were his only known associates. Perhaps we should start with relatives' residences or extermination offices. We have to find Glim. He's a danger to himself and any human he comes across, I said. The world has changed since he's been gone. Noah ripped his mask off. This is a fucking disaster. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Let's keep our heads. What's done is done, Sarah offered. Tarva, do you want us to call in a UN manhunt? Manhunt? I thought UD didn't hunt sapiens. It's an expression. For a search party, to capture a deviant. ISC. If you think it will bring him in safely, do it. I seek and ask the public for help too. Noah sighed. That's a good idea. We'll do what we can. I'm sorry. The two predators wandered off to make calls, while I fiddled with my holopad. The hospital lockdown should have been tighter, but I never intended to imprison these people. They were supposed to be eased back into the citizenry and learn the truth gradually. Human volunteers had signed on to give each rescue proper care, rather than to complicate matters. Perhaps their involvement was unwise, but we couldn't handle the cattle influx alone. It seemed like a good idea to give the predators a worthy cause. Most Terran refugees wanted something noble to occupy their day. The predators needed to track Glim and HFY down and bring them around to our side. Hopefully, in time, both Venel would understand the humans were here to help. Memory transcription subject, Governor Tarva of the Venel Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, November 29, 2136. The hospital was placed on lockdown until every crevice was accounted for. HFY was found barricaded in a janitor's closet, requiring human volunteers to bust down the door. Venel took charge of the situation from there and escorted the historian back to proper lodgings. The predators stayed away, since the female rescue was inconsolable with them nearby. Sarah decided to give HFY space, but asked Venel helpers to leave a holopad in the room. The Terran scientist posited that a call was the best chance to plead her case. However, our most pressing priority was Glim. The exterminator was nowhere to be found. I could only imagine his reaction to what lurked outside these premises. The UN has sent out search parties, but they've found nothing. We need to help. At my request, a Venlo driver arrived to ferry us to the local extermination office. Noah suggested to start the search with Glim's guild, and I agreed with his reasoning. However, barging into that venue with two famous humans would be awkward. UN representatives usually stayed out of the exterminator's way. That avoidance was a two-way street. Noah, I'm begging you, please don't stir up any trouble. We just want to find Glim, I said. The human snorted. I'll try. But I hate those people, and I won't lie about it. I wish you'd dismantle their office. Change happens slowly. I understand about obligate carnivores now. It's not their fault. Still, I can't take the risk of Venmo being hunted on the street. I'm not saying to let predators roam your settlements. Even we wouldn't, mostly. But driving entire species to extinction, burning them alive. If you find an animal that you can guarantee won't attack us, I'll spare it. But lesser creatures don't have your agency or restraint, and I can't take chances. Now stop lecturing me. I never tell you what to do on your planet. Sarah raised an eyebrow at our spat. The female human muttered something about ecological damage, and I pretended not to hear. While her personality was less confrontational, she had railed against exterminations to any scientific outlet that would listen. Her latest attempts included examples of human farmers enacting similar measures and discussions of zoonotic diseases. Look, I'm sorry for lashing out, I sighed. But it can feel like humans are bossing the Venmo around, in our own backyard. We're different than you, and the past few months have been a massive culture shock. I've shaken things up enough. Sarah forced a smile. We both understand that change doesn't happen overnight, and that you can only rock the boat so much. Right, Noah? The male human struck a sullen pose, but nodded. Sorry, Tarva. No problems with the exterminators, I promise. Noah opened the car door for me, while Sarah occupied the front seat. It was a bit disturbing that the predators referred to that position as shotgun. Was it a standard practice to gun down passerbys when motor vehicles were first invented on Earth? I didn't understand why the preferable seat was associated with a weapon. Sarah rotated a holopad in her hands, a sad look in her eyes. I could see she wanted to contact HFY, but was afraid of worsening the situation. Our car sped off down the road, and I whacked my prosthetic tail against her seat. Her gaze darted back over her shoulder, locking with mine. Though their interaction spanned a day, it was apparent the human and HFY had grown attached. Put your mask on, and try to talk to HFY. I bet she's scared silly, and losing any newfound hope of freedom, I whispered. You can't hurt her through a call, right? The Terran scientist twisted her dark curls. I don't know. The way she looked at us. I looked at you the same way when we first met, and now here I am, using Noah as a pillow. It's worth a shot with HFY. Have a little faith in her. Sarah took a deep breath, and slipped her face covering back on. The Gayan extended a video call to HFY's device, waiting with bated breath. The request went unanswered for agonizing seconds, and rang until reaching the default voicemail. It seemed the Venlo rescue wasn't in a talking mood. The scientist was quiet for a long moment, swallowing hard. The human steadied her face in the frame, and dialed the number once more. I waved in the background, hoping the preview would make HFY curious. The voicemail began to play again, before coming to an abrupt halt. A timid Venlo face appeared on screen. Venlo Prime has fallen. I should be resigned to this. Why did you have to give me hope? HFY, Please, just hear me out. We're here because our home was attacked. Our largest cities are destroyed, Sarah pleaded. Governor Tarva was kind enough to take Gaian refugees, so we offered to help you as a way to give back. It's not what you think. IT trusted you. I am sorry you found out like this. The truth is, my species has forward-facing eyes, and we're territorial. Because of those two things, everyone assumes we're like the Arxer. Including the Arxer. Mask. We wore the masks because we didn't want to scare you. We're aware how Ven will react to us. It wasn't meant as deception. No. Take the mask off. Sarah lowered her head, before reaching for the straps. She pulled the mask over her skull, and straightened her dark hair. The Venlil historian froze at the predatory creature on screen. The Terran scientist's eyebrows knitted together with concern. Perhaps it was my imagination, but her binocular eyes seemed to tear up too. HFY pressed a paw to her mouth, squeaking incoherently. I could see her swoon on her feet, as the current of fear almost swept her away. When the rescue snapped out of her stupor, she lunged for the holopad. It was a blur of panicked motion, a scramble to terminate the call. There wasn't a goodbye, or even a vocalization of her fear. Well, that went poorly. Now our historian friend has a face to put with the nightmare. With HFY disconnecting, Sarah cast a blank stare at her own reflection. I unclipped my seatbelt, hugging the predator from behind. Her lips curved upward, and she squeezed my paw. Noah offered a sympathetic smile, as he met his coworker's eyes. These two humans were my closest friends. I didn't want to see them hurt by Venlil. Are you okay, Sarah? I signaled, I love you, with my prosthetic, hoping the scientist had learned a bit of our tail language. It's not your fault. She offered a grateful nod. I feel terrible for adding to HFY's trauma. Now, I'm just another monster to her. What she went through with the Arxer, she doesn't need anything else to fear. These people have serious issues that have nothing to do with humans. You're part of our society now. They'd have to learn to deal with you, regardless. Noah sighed. I don't know if we can ask them to deal with predators. It feels wrong. We remind them of a deeply traumatic experience. Exactly. We have no right to force ourselves into their lives, Sarah agreed. Well, that's a decision they can make for themselves, I said. Humans have been an immense help for this program, and you did nothing wrong. Venlil infrastructure would collapse without you chipping in. It's the least we could do, Tarva. We want the best for these people. Nobody deserves to be treated like an animal. The shriek of a siren pierced the air, as our vehicle neared the extermination office. Venlil wearing flameproof attire stood in a flatbed, with other equipment tucked behind them. A chill crept down my spine, wondering what they were responding to. Was there really a major infestation, so close to the capital? Government affairs might have to be placed on temporary hiatus, or moved to an emergency bunker. The humans gazed out the window, expressions tinged with apprehension. Our stop was a building full of professionals, whose sole purpose was to wipe out predators. There was a reason I'd tried to keep the guild from interacting with UN personnel. The strongest opposition to the Terrans came from within exterminator ranks. Venlil Prime was a staging ground for their political statements. When refugees from Earth first arrived, most predator sightings turned out to be humans. Terrans were involved in isolated cases of petty crime, though nothing beyond Venlil malfeasance. Vandalism, assault, and robbery weren't constructs of the primates. However, witnesses had a tendency to phone exterminators about Terran criminals, rather than standard police. It was a miracle that none of the confrontations ended with a toasted human, so far. I told the exterminators to defer details of human cases to police. To use guns, not flamethrowers, if necessary and unavoidable. The question is if everyone listens. Sarah grimaced. Do you really think Glim is here? Could be. Only one way to find out, Noah answered. I swished my prosthetic tail in agreement. This wasn't where Glim worked, but it would be a familiar place. Noah told him that exterminator was a controversial profession. He might seek answers from the guild. The chocolate-skinned human exited the vehicle, and I wriggled out behind him. The Terran ambassador took my paw in his hand, bringing me close. Sarah fell in beside us as well, with a tentative smile. It was clear the predators wanted to show unity, since exterminators would be less hostile to their governor. Then again, I wasn't a popular figure to their guild. The exterminator's workplace was modest from the outside. The stucco exterior was painted a neutral gray, which made the octagonal building look like a smokestack. The front door bore a "Now Hiring" sign, along with a list of dangerous earth animals to report. Some of the images sent a shudder down my spine. Still, I was relieved to see that humans weren't on this montage. A Venlol was seated at the welcome desk, and she looked up as we entered the building. Her eyes widened at the two humans in her lobby. Ambassador Noah, Science Officer Sarah, and Governor Tarva? The Venlol exhaled in confusion, though she didn't seem afraid. This is a surprise. I'm Volek, with the Public Relations Department. I'll be happy to arrange a tour, if you'll wait a moment. Noah scrunched his nose. You're used to seeing humans? Of course. This is the capital of Venlol Prime, where most human refugees live. Many stop by to challenge or protest our work, and we hope they leave educated on the necessity of our services. We even hired a few Terrans for pest control, an interesting concept, by the way. Hold on, Volek. You don't want us all dead? Sarah asked. Not unless a specific human starts hunting here. Don't worry about that. I'm sure that won't happen, right? We're a progressive office, so we've terminated any employees who discriminate against you. This month, we also implemented a total ban on flamethrowers against infant animals. The Terran astronauts looked flabbergasted, at a loss for words. Even I hadn't heard that the extermination officers were recruiting human employees and scaling back incendiary devices. Perhaps coexistence between the guild and the predators was possible. It just would take time for other Venlol outposts to fall in line. Noah shoved his hands in his pockets. Where was the truck we saw going? Don't get me started. We've told you people time and again not to bring your pets, and humans still sneak them in. Volek flailed her tail in an animated gesture, before calming down. Another report of a cat loose on a street. Those things are monstrosities. Wait. What is a cat? I chimed in. One of the most invasive, destructive predators on Earth. If you get humans to be open, they'll admit that cats have driven multiple species extinct. That felines hunt for fun, and are still common pets. My eyes widened in horror. The United Nations obscured the human penchant for entertainment animals during first contact. It only became known after widespread interactions with Terran civilians. Noah insisted the practice was about companionship and pack bonding, with non-sapients. However, this cat didn't sound anything like the innocuous descriptors he assigned to pets. My expression morphed into a scowl. Are you kidding me, Noah? Is this true? Pretty accurate, yeah, he grumbled. Sarah scratched her head. I'm not even going to argue whether cats are a problem. Our own ecologists agree with Volek. Then why do you keep them as pets? Because they're cute and cuddly? Noah offered. I huffed in irritation. I hate you. Thanks. Volek gathered up some pamphlets, and acted bored by the response to the cat rationale. Noah's answer must be standard for a human. It was baffling that our friends saw dangerous predators as cute. It defied all self-preservation that primates should possess. If their ancestors were prey, shouldn't their instincts spark wariness of feral beasts? Here you go, the exterminator said, passing the brochures out. It's a full explanation of the scope of our operations. Noah took a step back. Thanks, Volek. Listen, we're just here to ask you a few questions. Happy to answer. Before you ask about me, I joined the guild 10 years ago. We have a job that not many people want to do, but we know how integral we are to protecting our loved ones and our homes. Animal suffering is not the goal. I'm sorry, we've gotten off topic here. That's completely on us. We're looking for someone. The Terran ambassador swiped at his holopad, showing Volek a recent photograph of Glim. The public relations specialist studied the image, and her pupils lingered on his neck brand. Realization flashed in her gaze as she put the pieces together. The cattle exchange was a publicized success story, with the credit attributed to Secretary General Zhao. Volek flicked her ears. I don't recognize him. This, rescue escaped. Why would you think he's here? Because Glim used to be an extermination officer, Sarah replied. I don't know how much he suspected us, but it was enough to run off. There's no telling where he is, or what he'll do. I cleared my throat. Even if he's not here now, it's possible he'll turn up. We'd appreciate your help. Absolutely, I understand. I'd like a copy of your contact information, and that photo, Volek said. If any of our people see him, we'll notify you. Noah nodded. Thank you. I guess we're back at square one. The Venmal straightened her tail, imploring the humans to wait. She scanned a map on her holodisplay and zoomed in on the hospital. From there, the exterminator obtained a route to the closest public transportation. I watched with interest as she selected a tram station. Volek pointed with her tail. If I were you, I would ask around here. Lots of people on the run try to get as far away as possible. But nobody is going to make it far on foot, of course, a mile is a miracle. Assuming Glim knows the capital's layout, he might look for public transit. That's actually a good idea. Thanks, Noah said. Sarah cleared her throat. Volek, how did you arrive at that conclusion so fast? We track a few people ourselves. Investigating reports of predator disease, you know. The male human gritted his teeth. Yes, we do know. Let's get going, Tarva. The Terrans departed the office, and we hustled back toward our vehicle. A few pedestrians spotted the most famous humans leaving the extermination headquarters. Noah and Sarah paid no mind to the holopad photos taken of them. Both were used to stares whenever they made an appearance. The three of us hopped into the car and set a course for the train station. If we didn't locate Glim soon, he could wind up anywhere on the planet. The rescue would become untraceable, a needle in a vast haystack. Perhaps he would reunite with the less progressive extermination sects. It wasn't in humanity's best interest to let a wild card slip away.